Alright, welcome to another video in Algebra 2. In this video I want to take some time to explain what is happening to your hyperbolas when your h and your k change. So in the previous video I showed you how to make the hyperbola graphs when there is no change in your h and k, or there is none. See, this particular graph is like the others. You have no h and no k, so that means the point of origin, your asymptotes, will both intersect at the point of origin 0, 0. Okay. Now you notice also that this graph is a horizontal graph. Okay, so the main axis, the vertices, will be found on your x-axis. So now let me manipulate my a little bit, my b's. Okay, now take a look at what happens. Now we're going to look at how the graph is manipulated, how it changes when you are off the point of origin. So I'm going to add an h now. So I'm going to manipulate the h. So when I have h minus 1, for example, okay, notice how it shifts over to the right, 1, when it's positive 1. So the standard formula is x minus whatever your h term is. So look what happens when I have a negative 1. So that's essentially x plus h. So you move over. When it's a negative h, you move over to the left. Now it's a negative h, but your equation will look like x plus 1. Okay? Now as I go more negative, notice what happens to my graph. It moves over to the left. Okay, now when I go positive, I move over to the right. Okay? So now look what happens when I manipulate my k and my y term right over here. Okay, so it'll be y minus some integer. It goes up and down along the y-axis. Okay, with the fixed point, with the fixed x point. Okay, so I can manipulate it, move it around. I'm increasing my y, and as you can see, it's going up and down along the y-axis, along the fixed point of negative 1.5 on the x term. Now, pay attention to what happens when I make it a vertical graph. So recall that when it's a vertical graph, your hyperbola will be facing up. It's going to open up and it's going to open down, right? And then also pay attention to what happens to your terms here. If you remember, your y will now take the place of the first position and your x will take the place of the second position. Okay? In fact, let me move this back to the center, how we had our standard ones in the previous video. Okay, so this is without a k, without an h. Now, when it's a horizontal graph, when I moved my h, it moved along the x-axis. Now look what happens when I manipulate my x, when I manipulate my h this time. You're going to notice that the graph, instead of going left and right, it's going to go up and down along the y-axis. So on a vertical graph, when I manipulate my h, I move about my y-axis, and my pivot point basically stays at the x point. Okay, now look what happens when I manipulate my k. Okay, so you'll notice your k changing over here. So when I manipulate my k in a vertical graph, it moves along the x-axis. So it's inversed, if you will. So it's important to keep in mind when you're graphing these. Okay, so recall that on the horizontal graph, when I manipulate the h, it moves about along the x-axis, and the k moves about the y-axis. But then when I have a vertical, it's reversed. H moves around the y-axis, and then your k moves along the x-axis. So keep that in mind as you graph, and I hope this helped. And now we will actually graph some of these in class. Okay, good luck in your study.